And I would like to welcome here Cristina Lucia Sucala, that will speak about the project Planeta Petrila in Romania.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Cristina Sucala. I'm an architect based in Paris. I am specialized in 20th century heritage. And I am one of the founders and working currently on the project Planeta Petrila. Oh, okay. Is it good here? Okay. Planeta Petrila bears a double signification. On the one hand is the documentary that came out in 2016. And on the other hand is the name of the association we work under today. It was a huge step. It was founded in 2018. And it was quite a road because the project started in 2012. We were brought there by our passion for industrial heritage and also by the passion of the local community who wanted to save their project, their mining. And also we were brought by the figure of Ion Barbu, a local artist, a very well national level caricaturist. Is the second, okay. Okay, all right. Actually from 2016, when I wanted to find out what is more about using industrial heritage into community regeneration, I have started a PhD program at the Ironbridge Institute of Cultural Heritage. But today I'm not going to talk about my research. I'm going to focus on the activities that our huge team and ongoing team brought together. It's already a 10 years work, so I'm going to try to make it short. First of all, what you need to know is that Jiu Valley it always was a border area, and the Petrila mine is part of it. So in 1859, when the Petrila mine was opened, and allegedly it's the oldest and deepest coal mine in the Jiu Valley area, it was part of the Austria-Hungary Empire. So you can see at that, actually, it was that part, and we had the Austria-Hungary on that side. So Jiu Valley is located in the meridional Carpathians over here, and it measures about 60 kilometers long. It's a bit shorter than Nord-Pas-de-Calais or Ruhrgebiet. And the mine of Petrila is situated over there. We're not going to focus necessarily on this today, but if we zoom in, we can really find this kind of vineyard and wine structure that you talked about. What we need to know and what's the particularity about Eastern Europe coal mining heritage is also a time gap, which is about 30 or 20 years comparing to France or the UK or Germany. And for example, in 2015, when the Petrila mine closed officially, in the area where we used to be around 15 mines, only 4 were still functioning. And today, almost all of them are closed. And the last ones to be in the closing process is Lonia and Lupin. Okay, so Petrila and the mine of Petrila was functioning for almost 100 years. And it was a lesser scale developed mining area because what we need to know is that Romania was a predominantly agrarian culture at that time. So in 49, when the Socialist Party came into power, they decided to develop a completely out of scale exploiting mine, which was in a sort of a coherence with a strategy of a sort of a autonomous industrial production of the country, which brought us at the fall of communism in 1989 with a huge derelict, out of scale, and and not efficient industrial heritage. One of the most important steps that we managed to do is in 2016, when at the end of the 2-year-long process, we managed to list the site as a national level monument, national level heritage ensemble, with some important buildings. And also it wasn't necessarily an easy step. It was also quite a conflictual one with a national closure, mine closing company, because that made their process quite difficult, and it was also stagnated in the process. I'm gonna try to shortly present our project steps, and then the main buildings that are listed today: the old preparation, the main shaft, and the old compressors. The art gallery is the first one that was opened in 1859. The new head frame and the mechanical workshops, and then briefly talk also about the following strategies. What I think everybody knows in this room is that industrial heritage and coal mining heritage regeneration is quite a very long distance run. It's quite an endurance run. So here is a short timeline about our activities that started in 2012 with the first workshops. Actually, the first workshops came from a very architectural point of view. We went there with students, with architecture students, even from Belleville in 2013. And we tried to focus on the analysis of the heritage of the area, and also to build awareness. What we realized at the end of those workshops, it was that we were a bit we went a bit too far, and the community was not ready to receive such strategies. And it's important to note that in 2012 and 2013, we were still in the process of the closing of the mine. The mine was still working. Everybody knew that it was supposed to be closed, but it was not there yet. So our first step started in 2011 when we identified the first stakeholders. And then, as I was saying, in 2012 and 2014, with the first student workshops. And then in 2015, the mine officially closed. That didn't necessarily mean the whole closing activity stopped, because it was the day the last coal wagon came out of the mine. But then the national mine closing company still had 2 years to actually do all the technical aspects of sealing the pits and all. So in 2016, we managed to list the mine as a national monument, and then a series of activities like the Planeta Petrila documentary, which was quite a success, directed by Andrei Dascălescu. And then when we founded the association in 2018, we continue our cultural events. So these are some images from the first workshops, and the first two ones in 2012 and 2013, and then the first participatory workshop when we transformed the former, not necessarily very important pump station into the first cultural center, based actually in the mine area, and with the help of the inhabitants, and also with the help of some miners that were still working there. And it is important to note that when we opened it, it was the first time people came there in another purpose than to go to work. So they were a bit reluctant at the beginning, but it was quite an event. These are the first, yes, one of the most important results of those workshops was also that in 2013, we managed to make to do a building survey. So, which is one of the most important steps to have a documentation about the buildings that we want to list. So this is the main shaft with a hole. And then the washing plant, the compressors, the first gallery that opened in 1859. the new head frame. And here we can see the different building times of the area. And I think what is important to see is that if the gray buildings are the ones built at the end of 19th century, and then in yellow, the ones between the two wars, and in red, everything that was built after that. So this is also replicated at the scale of the city, and it's not necessarily today's discussion, but the whole area tripled in surface after, in between 1949 and 1989. In the listing process, we did manage to have the support of the local administration. It was the first time they actually decided to support us, even if it was a sort of a double action. And at a declarative level, we were supported. At another level, our listing application was blocked in the Ministry of Culture for 1 year. And we actually had the chance of a change in the government that made it possible for us to list the buildings. So in order to promote that, in 2015, we celebrated the first Industrial Heritage Days. And then you can see in 2016, the discussions between the former mayor and the closing mining company and officials from the Ministry of Culture. It was quite a very tense discussion. So as I was saying, one of the most important steps was in 2018, because we created the first structure who unites stakeholders, both from administrative bodies and from the associative bodies. It's important to note that as we are in the full process of mining transition, in Romania, we don't necessarily have the administrative structures who can take on the management of such areas. And also there's no, there's no necessarily know-how on the transfer of the property from the Ministry of Energy to the local administrations. Actually, we are still in that process, which has started in 2018, and we hope, we cross our fingers, that maybe at the end of 2021 or 22, the county council will finally take over the property of the mine, and we will be able to secure some more financing, because actually that's a huge blockage in the transformation and in the conservation process. Okay, now I'm really close to the end normally. So here are some images. Ever since we've been celebrating the Open Mines Day, with the exception of the 2022 and the pandemic year, we opened the first rescue museum, which is actually held by former miners who do guiding tours. And the most important part is also that the public that goes today there and who visits the mine is more and more a local public, because it used to be professional public, as the architects and the people that are interested in industrial heritage, and it's more and more the people that actually live there who use it and who see it differently. Let's say the discussions. And yes, the last project, and also quite an important one, is the fact that we managed in 2002 to secure financing to do the first feasibility study for the preparation plant, and it was part of the first real public consultation on what they actually wanted to have there. It was in a difficult period because it was in 2020, so it was in a full COVID times. So maybe it wasn't the best moment to do it, but I think it was important in the life of the community to see that. And this is the result of the first feasibility study, which involved also a structural study and also a financial one. And it's going to serve in the future to apply for financing and finally transform one of the buildings. This is the view, the larger view on the master plan and what we imagine about it. And this is the part, the listed building. This is the listed building, the listing site. And one of the important things we really want to do is to make it part of the city, and the city hall would like to move there. So that would be a good aspect. And of course, there will be a co-circuit visiting and an archive. And what I forgot to say is that in our project, we try to focus on two important resources, the industrial heritage and the community. And what is interesting is that in the city, the young robotics team has quite a lot of success. So we think that that should be encouraged, and all these areas should also be part of the community and part of the local resources, and not necessarily a tourist strategy that is very often discussed when mayors or public administrations talk about industrial heritage. This is our short-term course of actions with protecting the buildings and conserving them. And then this is our long-term course of action with designing a master plan who would be coherent with the rest of the area and also participate in the economic development. And then try to see if we can replicate that at the area. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Okay, I would like to welcome here Georges-Henri Laffont from Saint-Étienne, France.
Okay, sorry. I start again. First, hi everybody. Thanks to Beatrice, Margarita, and all the staff for this event. I'm very happy to be among you. My name is Georges-Henri Laffont, former geographer and urbanist. Nobody is perfect. Actually, lecturer and researcher in the Saint-Étienne School of Architecture. My goal today is to propose to the debate some theoretical, methodological, or operational exploration, draw for the first analysis of what's happening at Corio, an old mining site in Saint-Étienne, France. A few words to Saint-Étienne. What is it? Saint-Étienne is a rural former area between Loire and the Rhône Valley, near a big town called Lyon. Today, well known as a shrinking city, a black city one, and for the oldest of you, perhaps a green city with a great football team. But today, it tried to rebirth with design and creativity, Biennale of Design, and Saint-Étienne is a member of UNESCO network of creative city. As I need to improve my English, I will read my paper. Saint-Étienne has extracted from its subsoil the resources of its economic prosperity. Since the end of the 70s, in the last century, the challenge is to provide its renewal. The management of the mining industry marks witnesses of a productive economy and industrial societies are more than questioned today. as long as related between eraser and invisibilization on one hand, museification and overvaluation on the other. In both cases, the aim was to repair, to take care of, in the sense of being active, strong intervention to eliminate the stigma of the past. It was done to restore the territory to a kind of initial state, to pursue its development and seek new level of growth. Today, on a post-carbon society, we need other types of care for the territory, a particular attention to all in and through the tangible and intangible heritage creates a link between the members of a society, between them and the environment in all its dimensions and all components, between local society and all the world in their diversity and unicity. To pay attention of and to maintain a milieu, a word from Augustin Berg, kind of environmental living with non-human and human reality, seems to be what architecture, urbanism, and design must do to overcome Anthropocene. As a kind of common heritage, a landscape that is both imprint and matrix of relational dynamics that tend, not without conflicts to establish new rules, form, and practices, Curio can provide some perspectives from through thoughts and action, not to occupy differently, but to inhabit in continuity, post-mining territories and other. Since the Renaissance, geological and water resources, the know-how of its craftsmen and geographical position have ensured prosperity of the city. A real industrial epic took place, associating the production of ribbons and silk, the iron craft, and of course, the extraction of coal. At the end of the 19th century, the area was then at its apex. Gradually, the curve was reversed, and numerous economic and industrial crises contributed to forging an image of a new town in the middle of the coal mines without urban, architectural, or landscape qualities. The decision to end coal mining exploitation in Saint-Étienne was set out in the January Plan, published in 1960, a revision of the French energy policy at the time when oil was playing an increasingly important role. Indeed, if a geological and social world has been swallowed up, remarks of the history still remain in the landscape. These vestiges have different meaning in the outcoming act of transforming this territory and in a way of repairing it after the end of the mining. The use of the remain and footprint left by the mining industry is usually divided between, as said in introduction, two contemporary approaches. The first is eraser. It is a question of filling it and flooding the pits, of eliminating all the relics of exploitation considered as stigmata of an old industry to return the territory to its natural state and, paradoxally, to make Saint-Étienne Basin enter post-industrial modernity. The residual elements are then constraints and risk. The second, overvalorization, is a result of a trend, particularly significant in the last 2 decades, to stage meaning remains for new heritage, tourism, and cultural uses. In this case, the residual remains become resources and amenities. In the wall of the Saint-Étienne coalfield, the valorization and staging remain timid, while eraser has been privileged. This strategy and action will translate as many attempts as possible to compensate the disappearance of the economic activity to attenuate the crisis generated on this territory. In the heart of this basin, one site, Coyo. The site began to be exploited from 1824. More than 1,000 miners and clappers, women who pulled the coal on the slag heaps, worked in the site. In 1946, the nationalization of the mining companies reorganized the sites and production in the Saint-Étienne basin. And Koyo was closed in 1983. From 1981, it became a mining museum. Low platform, crassier, local nickname for slag heap, head frame, production building, and then invested in different ways with a strong orientation associated with the technical and engineering imagination under the leadership of the Association of Friends of the Mine Museum. For Philippe Père, former curator of the museum from 1990 to 1918, the entire site has in fact emerged relatively unshaked from more than 30 years of conservation. Really, Koyo is not directly concerned by the reconquest and the transformation of the Roman fabric. Puy-Couriot was classified as a historical monument in 2011 and joined the cohort of buildings and sites participating in the monumental scheme, preserving it from environment, situation, and dynamics of change. Koyo sites gradually open up, leaving place for other ways of creating links between the heritage and the contradictory, fluctuating aspiration of local population. New ways of repairing these post-mining territories and erasing, valorizing, and musifying are being implemented. On the initiative of the curator Philippe Père and the mayor of the time, Michel Thiollière, a new project was also developed to, for example, link people to the roots of Saint-Étienne in a sensitive and deductive ways, transform the status of the site from mausoleum to a cultural tool of reappropriation. At first, place of work, then place of memory, Koyo became a place where realities that official history obscures can be questioned, such as the role of the woman in the mining industrial civilization, working condition, immigration, racism, and so on. Beyond these practices, individuals, communities, and groups are reappropriating Koyo by rediscovering the scale that links it to all its substrates, whether ecological, technological, or symbolic, material, or immaterial. However, it is possible to say that Koyo, a relic and a ruin of a time that must be surpassed, be Anthropocene, is a work site of the Holocene, this adventure to maintain the habitability of the world in all its dimensions. For the researcher, teacher, engaged actor, and the inhabitant, Koyo is an invitation to risk regaining an earthly footing, to follow the tangled threads of everything that make up the complicated fabric of the world. Whether it be the web that brings together not only humans, the earth, other spaces, biological elements, but also artifacts, technology, and mixed objects, and again, languages, spirits, ghosts, everything that live in this world. In 1983, the earth closed in a geological, geographical, and social world, but that has now been lost. 500 million tons of coal were extracted in 6th century by people from rural areas from Haute-Loire and Ardèche, Italy, Spain, the Balkans, North Africa, and Poland. On the surfaces, the landscape, which has become post-mining, show marks of the activity that have different meanings in the ongoing act on transforming this territory after the end of mining. What we observe at Koyo are two ways of caring, repairing a situation by a precise intervention, more or less long, more or less strong, aiming to reestablish a short of initial state, maintaining a situation by paying attention to everything that makes a link where contact, proximity, Conviviality allows us to institute the word of Augustin Berg, milieu. That's what we tried to do this year with a student of the School of Architecture and a formal member of the French network of territories, with two waves of exploration. The first, the reloaded imaginaries, and the second, try to keep the project as first a research question to produce shared knowledge, hypotheses, debate with all stakeholders, with all actors, human and not human, not easy, and then give the project as a permanent evolution to do, to think about what we are doing, and so on and so on. To conclude, Curio, as a post-mining territory, questions and challenges in his own way modernity. It does not condemn or deny the quest for progress, freedom, justice, and security through the development of science technology. It invites us to recognize some consequences of the modern project and to take back the ideological principle which founded it to deconstruct etymological and political presumption. Designing, architecturing, landscaping the post-mining territories does not, according to us, amount to making them more sustainable, but to renouncing this secular project that are modernity. To acclimate the post-mining territory, need to find a new anthropological project. Care requires a reconciliation of man as species, society, and multitudes of individuals with himself and with the world, not the one he has shaped, not as Gaia, but as a co-evolving diversity. The horizon that is emerging is a reinvestment of humanity in various ways. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. So I would like to invite here Sanda Nicola from Liège University in Belgium that will bring us back to Giu Valley in Romania. Just to make sure I know how this works.
Yeah, great. This is the next slide. This is the previous. This is the.
Okay. This is good.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je m'appelle Sanda Nicola. Je suis doctorante en sciences géographiques à l'Université de Liège. Mais je suis un petit peu plus anglophone que francophone. Donc, thank you so much for having me at this event. When Margarita knows, when it was announced, I had no idea if there's place for a geographer among you people. But I'm really, really happy that you accepted to find out some of my partial results in Giu Valley. Nice to meet you, Christina. We haven't been formally introduced so far, but part of her work is actually part of my research, and that's extraordinary. You have no idea, but while you were speaking, I took pictures and they have already been sent to Giu Valley, because I think it's really, really important for this community to know that the scientific community keeps an eye on what's happening in Giu Valley. Now, geographical and cultural limitations in the post-mining development strategy. As I told you, I come from the University of Liège, where I started my PhD 1 year ago in the Laboratory for the Analysis of Places, Landscapes, and European Countryside, which is one of the 24 labs forming SPHERE research unit at University of Liège. We're talking about 140 researchers from different disciplines. And I'm so happy that I have their support for my research project. Now, when I started my research project as a proud Romanian citizen and concerned Romanian citizen who's been brought in and who's been born and raised in close to Giu Valley in Hunedoara County, I knew that I would like to focus on the management of transition. And I knew that Jiu Valley will be one of my case studies. But to be able to assess the stage of transition in Jiu Valley, I knew that I have to go through pre-existing literature. And I knew that I have to find out what a successful transition means. So at this point, I think that your work in Ruhr Valley was very, very important also, because one of my reference was Prosper Haniel mining, the mine Prosper Haniel in Ruhr Valley, which was the last one that Germany closed in 2018, was my reference because of the resource. We're talking about dark coal as in Jiu Valley, and because they stayed to the program, which Jiu Valley didn't do. So probably my presentation would be a bit more informative and pedagogical, but maybe it is a good opportunity to put again the church in the middle of the village. I really like this Belgian saying, or is it French? Mettre l'église au milieu du village. C'est français. Okay, so we're talking about the just transition and how does the just transition differ from previous socioeconomic transformations. And I guess it is important because humanity has seen so far other socioeconomic transformations. So what's so special about the just transition these days? Very quickly, I'll go through the eligibility criteria for the allocations from the Just Transition Fund, and some reflections on the notion of stakeholder when dealing with the just transition. And then I will focus on the case study in Jiu Valley, trying not to repeat what Christina already told you. And most of all, from my research so far, to extract some ideas about what the stakeholders in Jiu Valley really want, because the different background of the stakeholders lead so far to divergent interests of the stakeholders. Now, how does the just transition differ from previous socioeconomic transformations? After reading tons of documents from the European Commission, I selected 5 important criteria. Is the intentionality. Just transition is not only replacing one economic model with another, but this economic transformation needs to be geared towards a predefined view of society. A society where environmental protection, social justice, and economic development are equally important. You cannot say that one aspect is more important than another. Now, for transition to be just, there's an imperative need of proactive governance, able to drive the change towards environmentally sustainable and socially attractive outcomes. And the mandatory in the decision-making process is the participatory democracy. Also, the key element for the success of the transition is the public acceptance. So, in short, the European Commission gives the guidelines, the European Commission allocates money, the European Commission is selecting the consultancy firm who will develop the post-mining strategy of a given region, but the decision stays at the local and regional level. So it's up to the stakeholders. How will the region look like after the total phase out of coal? So we have 17.5 billion euro, which is the Just Transition Fund, and that is going to be split among the EU member states based on these 3 criteria. The level of greenhouse gas emissions in regions with high carbon intensity, the employability in the coal and lignite extraction industry, and the employability in carbon intensive industries. And based on these 3 criteria, we have here the top 10 beneficiaries of JTF allocations. As you can see, Poland is on the first place. 20% of the total of the Just Transition Fund will go to Poland, Germany, and Romania. Romania is the 3rd big beneficiary. We're not talking only about the coal mining basin in Gil Valley. We're also talking about the lignite basin, Oltenia, and also some other parts of the region. But Gil Valley is the place where the most important resources of coal of Romania are based. Now, I'm absolutely sure that everybody knows what's a stakeholder, that a person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business. But when we're talking about just transition, for me, it was really important when starting to work in field to completely understand the profile of each stakeholder, because pretty much everybody living and working in a coal mining region is a stakeholder in this situation. So miners, former miners, local authorities, national authorities, young people, not so young people, everybody has a particular interest. Everybody's life will be somehow affected, good or bad, during this transition process. Now, I know Christina already had better maps than me, but so just a quick look on this physical map. We're talking about a pretty isolated depression in the mountains in the southwest of Transylvania. Is it me or is it somebody else? Okay, so at the beginning of the 90s, right after the fall of the communism, we had 17 coal mines here, and the number of the people working in mining industry was about 50,000. Nowadays, the situation is pretty much changed. Just a quick look over my methodology while running this case study in Gil Valley at the beginning of this year. I used the purposive sampling to select 105 people that are really well informed. I admit I was not really interested in everybody's opinion, but I wanted to pick up the people that are really well informed from different walks of life and different disciplines, the people who really know what we are talking about. And why it's important to mention that is because the topic, it's not so present in the public debate in Romania. And that's a big problem. There are not many people that can tell you what just transition means, although we are talking about a top beneficiary country of the JTF allocations, but the topic is not covered in the media. So I had 105 surveys, well-informed participants. Out of that, I selected 15 people. I ran semi-structured interviews, and after collecting all the data, I shared the knowledge that I found with the locals in 2 focus group sessions. The current state of play, 4 mines are still active out of 17. The 4 mines supply the 2 power plants, Mintia and Paroshen. We have 4,000 jobs at risk. Why I mentioned Prosper Haniel in Ruhr Valley? Because it has the same deadline as Lona and Lupin for closure, 2018. Well, it's the end of 2021. They're still active. No plans for the closure. So closure of Lona and Lupin mines initially scheduled for 2018 postponed. The closure of all 4 was announced until 2024, yet in the latest version of the development strategy, which is currently under public debate in Romania, the deadline mentioned is 2030, yet Romania is among the countries that have no firm commitment in this regard so far. And this is updated. Why am I passionate about the subject? Because as I told you, I am myself a stakeholder. I was born and raised there. I know the need for the transition in the region. I know how much work needs to be done. I know that there are money for this work to be done, yet the transition is constantly delayed and postponed. So who's doing that? That's the legitimate question. Why don't they start implementing the provisions of the transition. It came to what stakeholders want. And I started to talk to people to understand exactly what they want and why they preserve the current status quo. And as you will see, because I selected some of the quotes that people gave me, you will see that their wishes are different and most of the time divergent. And we're talking about people that have to work together and to find the solution for their common future, common green future. Now, a man who's been working who's still working in a mine. So this is the category of stakeholders that we usually focus more on because they are the ones that are about to risk their jobs, to lose their jobs. This is what she's telling me. In 3 more years, I would already have the necessary seniority in underground work that would allow me to retire. This is the option that suits me the most. And I hope that the unions will be able to postpone mine closures at least until 2030. This is a legitimate wish, but that will come in contradiction with the wishes of other stakeholders. For example, a former mining engineer, he is aware that they are still exploiting an exhausted field in a market that does not need this expensive energy. Yet controlling the workers, the unions have blackmailed governments for decades and production has not stopped yet. For obvious reasons, it should stop. A female that's an NGO activist during my focus group session 2, who left Jiu Valley and lived in Bucharest, but during the pandemics went back home to live with the parents. She sees the potential, the touristic potential, but she is aware that tourism cannot be developed in an isolated depression. So she thinks that transportation infrastructure needs to be built first. And last but not least is the wish of a very young student. Yes, a very young student who's contrary to the ideas of everybody, who's it's not such a big problem to go through a personal transition and to become an agronomist, why not, and to work in the occupations that was in the region 150 years ago before the mining. So as you see, different, very, very different ideas about the common future. And when I did the stakeholder mapping, everything became clear. As you see, I grouped them on basis of attitude towards transition. We have people that are supportive, people that are passive, people that are against this transition, and I place them in the level of influence, high influence and low influence. So you will see that there are stakeholders that support the transition, but most of the time they are placed in a level of very, very low influence upon the process, like local entrepreneurs, local NGOs, academics. We have national authorities, which technically they are supportive of the transition, but as I said, in the domestic debate, they don't talk at all about this problem. They are signatories of the international treaties, but in the domestic debate, they are not at all involved. And the fact that European Commission is placed there and invested with so much influence upon the process, that shows us that the confusion still persists upon who must be doing what during the process of transition, because it is not up to European Commission how the future of the region will look. It is up to them, the local stakeholders. So just several conclusions, and probably what I would like you to keep in mind is that paradoxically, the rules set by the European Commission to support the great changes in societal practices favor exactly those who do not want anything to change, in particular regions from Eastern Europe. Thank you so much.